so to begin. As we always do, with words of inspiration, hope, and a challenge. Dear friends, on Sunday, the burial occurred of the late, great Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. This video that you're about to see provides our opportunity to pay our respects to, in my mind, one of the greatest personalities of faith who have lived during my lifetime. A faith leader, educator, academic, author, a broadcast, a human being with an incredible sense of humor and timing. The talk which we are about to hear so aptly personifies why we're meeting today during Interfaith Week, in whose aim of building good relationships and working partnerships between people of faiths and beliefs he so wonderfully exemplified. He's speaking at the House of Lords on interfaith dialogue in multicultural Britain. So now, have a listen to yourselves.
I thank the noble Lord, Lord Mitchell, for initiating this important and necessary debate. And I go back to words said by an expert on the subject 2,600 years ago. His name was Jeremiah, and he became known as a prophet of gloom. Were he to return to life today, doubtless he would be an economist. But he was, in fact, the first person to analyze the situation many find themselves in today of being a minority in a culture whose beliefs are not their own. Jeremiah wrote a letter to the Jewish exiles in Babylon, in which he said this: "Seek the welfare of the city to which you have gone and pray to God on its behalf, for in its peace and prosperity you will find peace and prosperity." He told them, in effect, maintain your identity while contributing to the common good. Be true to your faith while being a blessing to others, regardless of their faith. That is the challenge today. The good news about religion is that it creates communities based on altruism and trust. It teaches people to make sacrifices for the sake of others. It builds social capital. The bad news is that every community divides as it unites, because for every us, there is a them, the people not like us. The best way to improve interfaith dialogue in multicultural Britain is to create a sense of national identity so strong that it brings different ethnic and religious communities together in pursuit of the common good, not just the good for my group, but the good for all of us together. A nation should respect its faiths, and faiths should respect the nation. That is the only way we will achieve integrated diversity and the dignity of difference, in which we see our differences as contributions we bring to the common good. In yesterday's Times, Daniel Finkelstein wrote a moving tribute to his late father, who came to Britain as a Jewish refugee in World War II. He said, he lived here, proud of the nation that let him live, let him learn, let him teach, let him practice his religion, and ultimately let him die in bed, loved by his family. That is what Britain means to us in the Jewish community, and surely to the vast majority in all our faith communities. It is vital that we teach all our children, whether in faith schools or not, to honor this country, respect its traditions, contribute to its welfare, and show the same respect to others as we ask others to show to us. Therefore, I have a simple proposal to make. I believe that all Britain's faith communities should be invited to make a voluntary covenant with Britain, articulating our responsibilities to others and to the nation as a whole, so that we can be true to our faith while being a blessing to others, regardless of theirs.
For our tribute tonight, I'm quoting the Prince of Wales, who said, "His wise counsel was sought and appreciated by those of all faiths and none, and he will be missed more than any words I can say. But we give thanks for the immeasurable contribution which, in the tradition of the most revered teachers of the Jewish people, he made to all our lives." Amongst many world religious leaders, politicians, and organizations, the current chief rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, said that he was an extraordinary ambassador for Judaism. With his passing, the Jewish community, our nation, and the entire world have lost a leader whose wisdom, scholarship, and humanity were without equal. His immense learning spanned the sacred and the secular, and his prophetic voice spoke to our greatest challenges with unfailing insight and boundless compassion. He will be deeply missed, not just within the Jewish world, which benefited immeasurably from his teachings, but far more widely by all those whose lives he enlightened with his wisdom, profundity, and inspiration. Our hearts go out to Lady Elaine, Joshua, Dina, Gila, and the entire family. May they be comforted by the knowledge that his remarkable legacy will live on in the hearts and minds of the countless people he inspired. Rabbi Sachs laid down this challenge for us today and tonight. Maintain your identity while contribution to the common good. Be true to your faith while being a blessing to others, regardless of their faith. Tonight, our talk is Let Your Vision Be World Embracing, how we practice our faith in the 20th century, in the 21st century. Following this, my brief introduction of the panelists, they will make a presentation of about 10 minutes each, but I will provide them with a 1-minute warning. And we would like your participation, please. For would you like to forward any questions into the chat box and mark it for the panelists at the end of all? And at the end of all these presentations, Trevor, our chair, will direct the cream of these questions to the individual panelists, where then I may ask others to contribute. So, panelists, in the words of Lord Sachs, take responsibility, take a moral responsibility, take a collective responsibility. Be proud and confident of who you are and what you are, whilst proclaiming the dignity of difference. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I give you a panel: Sachita, Rabbi Hackenbroch, Barney Leith, Deacon Anthony, and Iman Hamid. So let's start with Sachita. Sachita, namasteas to you. She was lucky enough to have grown up in the beautiful state of Goa in India within a multi-faith environment. She graduated from Bombay University with a degree in psychology and a diploma in Indian classical music. She spent numbers of years teaching and has worked with the special needs children in Barnet schools. Sachita has been highly active in interfaith matters for many years and is currently the chair of the Barnet Women's Interfaith Network. And she has recently been nominated as a Hindu representative for the Barnet Executive. She lives locally with a husband and 2 grown-up children, and we look forward tonight to your presentation as a Hindu in Barnet. Sachita, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ez. Namaste. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mrs. Caroline Stock, respected members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about embracing the world, I need to first introduce you to Hinduism. Today's topic, I feel, is quite apt and befitting to Hinduism. Hinduism is one of the world's oldest religion, and scholars believe that it's a synthesis of various Indian cultures and traditions with diverse roots and no one single founder or source. Hinduism is a traditional way of life there were different civilizations like Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Indus Valley civilization when Hinduism was born. The word Hindu is not found anywhere in the old scripts. Scholars believe that the word Hindu was accidentally invented by the Persians around 600 BCE. When the Persians saw the civilization on the bank of river Sindhu, they named the local living by the river as Hindus, and their culture and practices were called Hinduism. In the Vedic scripts, Hinduism is mentioned as Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, and Dharma means law. Hinduism allows one to have multiple streams of thoughts, which leads to one God and is the basis of tolerance towards other faiths. Hinduism, being a way of life, is world embracing. Truth is eternal, and one should pursue knowledge and spirituality through dharma, that is one's duty, and karma, that is one's action. One should live for moral order and right action. Due to overarching nature of Hinduism, it has accepted all the cultures. One needs to remember that the influence of Hinduism could be seen in Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia. It was also prevalent in Burma, Bhutan, Tibet, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Hinduism is a non-Abrahamic faith. There is no one founder or one set of rules to follow. It holds in itself several beliefs that may be mutually incompatible. It allows complete freedom to its believers to find answers to the questions of life, nature, and form of God. Every way of imagining God is acceptable, the result being millions of Hindu gods and goddesses. Hinduism is world embracing. The Sanskrit word Vasudeva Kutumbakam means the whole world is one family. Hindus freely visit churches, gurdwaras, dargahs, and seek blessings. Hinduism revolves around non-violence, tolerance, unity, theory of karma, and reincarnation. The ancient Indian art of yoga and meditation and Ayurveda has been embraced by millions in the world. The stress on protecting nature and vegetarianism has been the ethos of Hinduism to protect the earth. The values of Vedic teaching combined with the modern and scientific way of life during the 20th and 21st century has been the vision of today's India and Indians. For centuries, India has given refuge to many who have been persecuted for their beliefs by welcoming Zoroastrians, Jewish, and Armenian community. Hindus in India expressed their willingness to learn from refugees, the result being greater prosperity for India and satisfaction of reducing the suffering of others. Hinduism has embraced the world in the past and will be always continuing to do so in near future. Modern India is trying to eradicate the caste system which never existed in Hinduism during Vedic period. Caste system was the result of professional greed of highly educated people to restrict social mobility during post-Vedic period. Just as various communities of other countries assimilated in the Indian culture, Hindus who went abroad are adjusting into the host country's environment and are establishing landmarks to support local communities through employment, education, and charities. Thank you very much.
That was beautiful. Thank you very much indeed. Yes,
Thank you.
lots of applause going around there. That was just fantastic, Sahita. I love the fact that you were talking about climate change, the environment, vegetarianism. I'm going to embarrass my wife by talking about the fact that she does yoga every morning and I get up to a beautiful sight. And the fact that some of the refugees that you mentioned, the welcoming of the refugees, the welcoming of people. I've got this lovely image of you can worship God in many ways, and hence that's the explanation of the many gods that we see. But of course, as you said, it's transported in just to one God. So fantastic. Thank you very, very much indeed for that brilliant introduction just then. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, please go to your chat box. You can ask more questions for Sahita as we go through. But at this stage, I want to warmly thank Jackie Goymore and Roya Azagagan for two very wonderful members of our executive who have worked tirelessly and methodically together to organise this event tonight and deserve at this stage your warm applause, which you can give by acclaim or on the screen button below. Okay, I can hear that. Thank you. Right, next we have Rabbi Pini Hackenbroch. He's currently the senior rabbi at Woodside Park Synagogue, a thriving modern Orthodox community of some 1,400 members. Prior to his appointment, Rabbi Hackenbroch was a rabbi in Glasgow, where he was head of the Kashrut division for West of Scotland. Kashrut is the food certification for the Jewish community, but there he was the head of the Kashrut division for West of Scotland, and he's a weekly columnist for the Jewish Telegraph. I make no comment about the Jewish Telegraph. Growing up in Stanmore, he attended Hasmonean High School and read law at the London Guildhall University. He sits on the Rabbinical Council of the United Synagogues and is an educator for the Holocaust Education Trust, leading trips to Auschwitz, and has worked closely a number of years with several charities. And I'm delighted to say this includes the Barnet Multi-Faith Forum. Moreover, he's been an outstanding leader of his community, and together with his wonderful wife, Gila, they have never been afraid to challenge themselves and his community in initiating many educational projects that they have questioned and tackled provocative projects. They've also gone that extra mile to support the vulnerable in the community. And I urge you to see the video that I'm hoping that we will put shortly on our website, describing the incredible way in which the synagogue has provided food and comfort for its elderly during this pandemic. Rabbi P is also initiating a trailblazing conversation with our panelist tonight, Iman Hamid. I'm delighted this conversation will continue tonight. Married, as I said, to Gila, they have 4 incredible sons and 2 delightful daughters. His only downside is that he supports a very strange team in North London, managed by a quiet Portuguese virtuoso, who are currently residing just above my team in the Premiership. Rabbi H, welcome.
Thank you, Ez. I have to say, after that rather elaborate and exaggerated introduction and eulogy, I no need to die. I've heard it all now from you. Thank you, Ez.
My pleasure.
I'd also like to thank all the other Co-Barnet Multi-Faith Forum organizers for putting together and arranging this, for kindly and graciously inviting me to be a part of this very important program that we have tonight. I'd also like to say how delighted I am that Madam Mayor of Barnet, Councillor Caroline Stock, is here joining us, and we thank her for her ongoing support of this and so many other initiatives. And of course, I'd like to say how delighted I am to be joined by my esteemed co-faith leaders. I was, I have to say, persuaded to come on this panel tonight by the fact that it is a lockdown panel. That means, as Jackie described it to me, we are guaranteed a captive audience. And that is an offer that a faith leader can never refuse. I'd like to dedicate my contribution to the former Chief Rabbi of Great Britain and the Commonwealth, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, who sadly and tragically passed away very suddenly. He was an outstanding faith leader, a global figure instrumental in interfaith across the world. Rabbi Sacks' life's work, as we've already been hearing, was building bridges and fostering mutual respect and understanding between all people of all faiths and those of non-faiths. And therefore, as faith leaders, it is the challenge for us to collectively and individually strive towards this goal. The question which was put to us for this evening to address is, what is our vision? How do we practice our faith as faith leaders and faith communities in the 21st centuries? Friends, this symposium could not come at a more critical time. We find ourselves witnessing divisive and toxic elections and divided societies. In addition, we find ourselves in the midst of a pandemic that has already had a devastating impact on humanity, both in terms of the threat to life, but in addition to the threat to the emotional and psychological well-being of members of our society. And I believe that whilst we are experiencing a physical pandemic, which poses an immediate existential threat, friends, there has been a pandemic of a different kind growing for some time in Western society. What is the pandemic of our society? And what is the vaccine? Lord Jakobowitz, the former chief rabbi before Rabbi Sacks, was wont to say that at the crucial part of our prayer services 3 times a day, the silent Amida, we take 3 steps back before we move forwards. And therefore, perhaps it is important for us to look back before we look ahead to the 21st century. Europe, for the most part, has always been a place historically where faith has always played a very central role in all countries. It was in fact only in the 17th century that there began a secularization of Europe that did not happen because people lost their faith in God, but in fact the heroes of the Enlightenment believed in God. So what was it that led to secularization? It was that people lost faith in the ability of people of faith to live peaceably together. And therefore, friends, I think this is the first lesson for us, and that is to be mindful when people see that people of faith within their own faiths or between differing faiths cannot get along, and faith causes hatred and disunity, then others run a mile. In Judaism, we speak of every person being created in the image of God, and yet each one of us, we are told, is created unique. No 2 people are the same. And this idea, of course, is reflected in Caritas, in Veritas, and in Hadith, the idea of respect and love towards difference and towards people of different faiths or no faiths. And therefore, as faith communities, I think that we celebrate both our commonalities and our differences, because if we didn't have anything in common, then we could not communicate. But if we have everything in common, then we would have nothing to offer each other. Britain has been so enriched by the minorities and the various faiths, by each group represented here tonight, and the intricate harmonies of our several voices, and of our commonalities is that we surely all believe that faith has a major role in strengthening civil society. In the early 1990s, there's a well-known story which happens to be true. Rabbi Sacks had just been appointed, but not taken up the position as chief rabbi. And Dr. George Carey had just been appointed, but not taken up the position as the Archbishop of Canterbury. And therefore, in the interests of interfaith, they were both invited to Highbury Stadium for a midweek football match in view of the fact that they both were ardent Arsenal supporters. The great night came and everyone was delighted to see them. They came on to the football pitch, were presented a check to charity, and everyone clapped and applauded. The Arsenal faithful had great faith, believing that with the theological support and power that they had on that particular night. They had friends in high places, and it was impossible, if ever prayer counted, that Arsenal could possibly lose. That night, Arsenal went down to their worst home defeat in 63 years, losing 6-2 to Manchester United. And the next day, a national newspaper carried the story saying that if the Archbishop of Canterbury and the chief rabbi between them cannot bring about a win for Arsenal, does this not finally prove that God does not exist? The next day, Rabbi Sachs wrote back to the newspaper to say, to the contrary, what it proves is that God exists. It's just that he happened to support Manchester United. As faith leaders, I believe, and we all believe, that we are all on the same side. And when society sees this, that we are all on the same side, they will begin to appreciate faith as something positive, which brings harmony and love and peace rather than tensions and division. So what is the other global pandemic that I believe we have all witnessed and we are witnessing more and more? I think it's twofold. Firstly, our generation and the younger generation have become more and more insular, egocentric and self-absorbed. This occurs when there is no common vision. This occurs when the shared values contributing to the greater good, building and working together is no longer. Far from making them happier, more content, the lack of a higher purpose has led them to feel more unfulfilled, empty and devoid of meaning. Secondly, we live in a society where it is a culture of the blame game and refusing to take responsibility for one's actions. This has permeated society in all echelons, from time immemorial of Adam and Eve all the way through to the current society in which we live. It has been something which has caused havoc on society. What is the vaccine to this pandemic? In the face of a deeply individualistic culture, we have to offer community. Against consumerism, we talk about the things that have value but not a price. And in the face, friends, of a fragmenting families, we believe in consecrating relationships. We all believe in marriage as a commitment, parenthood as a responsibility, and the beauty of everyday life, which is etched in homes and schools with the charisma of holiness and grace. And therefore, our communities, we value people not for what they earn or what they buy, or for how they vote, but who they are. And every one of them is a fragment of the divine presence. We hold life holy, and each of us is encouraged by the knowledge that we are part of something greater than all of us. Each of us is in our own way is a guardian of values that are in danger of being lost in our short attention span, the social media information saturated era in which we live. And through our faiths are profoundly different, yet we recognize in one another the presence of faith itself. And that is the idea that we are able to listen to the beautiful music contained in our faiths that knows that God is the point at which soul touches soul and is enlarged by the presence of otherness. I know we're short on time, so just to conclude, there is an incredible story about Toscanini. Toscanini was a great musician, and he was once unwell, and therefore he was listening on the radio with his biographer to the most majestic piece, one of the pieces of his music. And something was troubling him. He listened to the most majestic piece, symphony that he could ever hear. And yet at the end of it, he said something was wrong. And he said there were 14 violins in that orchestra. There were meant to be, and yet I only heard 13. The biographer thought he was joking, laughing. And yet afterwards he made inquiries, and lo and behold, one of the violinists just before the performance had been taken ill. You see, Toscanini was able to have that sensitivity to appreciate the gift and contribution that each and every one of those violinists made to the total sound and beautiful symphony in the orchestra. And therefore, tonight, we all are committed to making the most majestic music, a grand overture, a symphony of cosmic proportions, a holy harmony that pierces the heavens and makes angels sing. May we all continue to lead with wisdom, generosity of spirit, and may all our efforts combined to become a blessing to humanity and to God. Amen.
Amen. Shukayach, Rabbi, more strength to you. Can we see a round of applause? I think we can, and the reactions on the screen to a fantastic presentation. Well, I come to shore more often, Rabbi, if you make those presentations on Shabbos. I love the fact that you mentioned community. It's the thing that brings us together, as Rabbi Sachs was talking about. It's and I think we come on. It's about we working together against the I, and you so succinctly put that into your presentation tonight. I also love the fact about the sense of music. I'm sort of singing here. It's a soul touching soul, reaching out, touching me, touching you. No, I'm not going to go into Sweet Caroline, but I think you know what I mean. Well, thank you very, very much indeed. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions on that, and that was a really lovely presentation. Thank you. Welcome to Barney Leith, OBE. John Barnabas Barney Leith has been a Baha'i since the mid-1960s, a member of the Baha'i community, elected National Governing Council since 1993, and including 7 years as its secretary. His abiding interest in the role of religion in the public square and is keenly involved in interfaith and multi-faith work. Formerly is chair of the trustees of Faith-Based Regeneration Network and Interfaith Network. And he was many years trustee of Interfaith Network for the UK. Both organisations I'm delighted to say I know a great deal about, as I am also now a trustee of IFN. For some years, he was chaired the Religion and Belief Consultative Group, whose focus was on the interface between religion, equalities and human rights, advising the Equality and Human Rights Commission. He's currently a trustee of the World Congress of Faiths, so please send Jenny Kartoupelis my warmest regards when you next see her, Barney. He was appointed an OBE in 2001 in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for his services to the Baha'i community and interfaith relations. He's married to Erica. They live in Welling with 3 grown-up offsprings and 5 grandchildren, and attends meetings of the Welling and Hatfield Interfaith Group. May I introduce you with this phrase from the Baha'u'llah: the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. Barney, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ez, very much indeed, and thank you, Madam Mayor and friends, members of the Barnet Multi-Faith Forum and all those present. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm afraid you have to blame Roya for my presence. She tied me down and said wouldn't let me go until I agreed to speak. So it's up to you to judge whether she made a good call there. What I want to do, and before I go any further, may I also join in the remarks on the late Lord Sachs. I also had the pleasure of knowing Lord Sachs and having interacted with him on many occasions in interfaith settings, and also to have travelled with him and with Archbishop Rowan Williams to Auschwitz and spent a whole day at Auschwitz, Birkenau. I had huge respect for Lord Sachs, an extraordinary man, an amazing teacher, an amazing scholar, but above all, a wonderful and warm human being. So we all miss him hugely. Now I'm going to show you I've got a PowerPoint presentation here, which I hope will work. Let's check that I've got everything. Okay, so what I wanted to do was just to introduce certain things about the Baha'i faith. The statement, "Let your vision be world embracing," is in fact from the writings of Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Baha'i faith. Sushita say, of course, that Hinduism is one of the oldest of the world's religions, and the Baha'i faith is one of the youngest of the world's religions. Baha'u'llah, whose shrine is this building here in just to the north of Akko in Israel. He lived from 1817 to 1892. He was born in Iran, but he was exiled for his teachings, amongst other things, from his native land. And actually, his exiles eventually had several. He was exiled to several places across the Ottoman Empire, and then he came here to what was then, of course, part of the Ottoman domains in 1868, and he passed away in 1892. So he is for us what we would say a manifestation of the names and attributes of God. It is through Baha'u'llah that as Baha'is we come to know God, we come to know what God's will is for us through his teachings and his writings. Excuse me. And Baha'is embrace Baha'u'llah's teachings and strive to live according to them and according to what he has given us in his writings. It's Baha'u'llah's writings that form the most substantial part of the Baha'i sacred texts, the Baha'i Holy Scriptures. And I will say that unity in diversity is a pervasive theme in Baha'u'llah's writings. The notion that we're all one human family, but like all the flowers in the garden, we are very diverse, we are different. We bring different things to the garden. It's one garden, but many different beautiful flowers. Let's see if I move on. Just wanted to show you a couple of places that are of significance to Baha'is in this country. The National Baha'i Centre is in Rutland Gate in SW7 and has been the National Baha'i Centre since the early 1950s. And the other place that is of huge significance to Baha'is in this country and across the world, actually, may be familiar to you if you have been to the New Southgate Cemetery. It is, of course, in the borough of Barnet, and it's the resting place of Shoghi Effendi, who was the guardian or the head of the Baha'i community from 1921 until his death in London in 1957. And he, of course, died in another pandemic because there was a flu pandemic in that year. And this is a very beautiful place. And of course, Roya and Sohail are custodians of this for the Baha'i community, and it's a place for prayer and reflection and meditation, a wonderful place to come when it's not raining. And here are some of the Baha'is. It's very difficult. I'm sure all those who are speaking today will say that it's very difficult to give more than a glimpse of one's faith in the time we have available. But these are some of the Baha'is in the UK, and their friends. I mean, the top row up there, top picture, they're not all Baha'is, but they are a group who've come from Hackney to a Baha'i study centre that we have in Oxfordshire. And the meeting below, the grid below shows some of the Baha'is in a meeting that I was engaged in over the weekend, just to give you a sense of the diversity of who we are as Baha'is. And one other picture just to show the diversity of the Baha'i community and its global spread. This is once every 5 years, the members of the national governing bodies of the Baha'i communities all around the world gather in Haifa in Israel, which is where the Baha'i World Center is, for our international convention. And it is there that these delegates elect our international governing body, our world governing body, the Universal House of Justice. I have been a delegate to that gathering several times. I am somewhere in that picture. This is like one of those Where's Wally pictures. If you can find me, you're a better man than I am going there, but it's a really, this is an incredibly diverse group of people from more than 160 countries. So it's an extraordinary experience to be part of this group, very focused on also on discussions about the state of the world and what we can be doing to build a better civilization. So the Universal House of Justice, I just mentioned, is the world governing body of the Baha'i community. And it has made this statement, amongst many others, that Baha'is believe that the crucial need facing humanity is to find a unifying vision of the future of society and of the nature and purpose of life. Such a vision unfolds in the writings of Baha'u'llah, whom I've mentioned a few moments ago. And this message was issued, or this is part of a message that was sent this year actually to the Baha'is of the world as a reaction to the pandemic and the difficulties arising as a result of the pandemic. And as you can see, the statement includes this appeal really that we should redouble our commitment to constructive action. The distressing state of the world can only spur us to redouble our commitment to constructive action. And that's very much a Baha'i way of thinking about the world and about acting in the world. Now I'm going to show you a short video clip from Northern Ireland, just to show you how Baha'is in a particular locality in the UK are working in a fairly deprived neighborhood. There is a building there which belongs to the Baha'is, and it's called the Hub. And you will see that the person who speaks first is a Baha'i from Northern Ireland called, called Jamie Anderson. And you will also see Soha, his wife, and some other Baha'is. So this is 2 or 3 minutes of video just to give you a sense of how Baha'is are on the ground.
The teachings of Baha'u'llah and the Bab have a very special resonance in the context of Northern Ireland. It's a society that has been divided along religious lines from its beginning. We drove through 2 communities that very strongly mark their territory by the symbols in the neighbourhoods and saying, you know, this is us. You must identify with this particular allegiance. In the context of Belfast, you know, the Hub is very significant because, like, it stands for something that tries to connect people to something that is for everyone.
So do you remember we were talking about thankfulness and being thankful and what we're thankful for? Oh yeah, you do. You remember. Do you not remember we made our
It's a very diverse neighbourhood, and many of the people who live here are young people, and they've seen glimpses of what it can be for people to work together. We've been trying to make it beautiful, so it'll also be a place that people can come and feel the spirit of what the physical building represents, which is that so powerful is the light of unity, it can illuminate the whole earth.
In our process of inviting the friends in that local area to come to the Hub, what's behind it is the oneness of humanity. That's the motivating principle.
What we're trying to do is work with young people who can get a vision for a future for Northern Ireland that can be unified.
Okay, everybody swing your partner.
The fundamental teaching of Baha'u'llah is the oneness of humanity. Your primary allegiance is to humanity, you know, and that it must supersede, you know, your allegiance to your nation or to your tribe.
A big finish.
Just to give you another picture, this is from South America. There is this foundation that's a Baha'i-inspired foundation that works with, particularly with young people, to give education and training in agriculture. And as you can see, there are all sorts of projects going on here. Some at least in Colombia is one of the main countries where Fundac functions, but it's really to empower people to grow their own food and to take charge of their own lives. But of course, it would be remiss not to also mention that alongside service to our fellow human beings, worship is absolutely central. It's what makes our lives tick. And this is just a glimpse of a Baha'i temple, Baha'i house of worship in Santiago in Chile, which was dedicated in 2016. And my wife and I had the privilege of attending the dedication. It's a beautiful building in the foothills of the Andes, but these buildings, these Baha'i houses of worship, really bring together this idea or the importance of worship and being of service to our fellow human beings. It absolutely rotates around this worship, building for worship. And just to finish, here are a few more of the delegates to our last international convention. And I think this illustrates the statement of Baha'u'llah that the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. Beautiful diversity, as you can see, but all one human family. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Barney. That was that's not all you have to say, I'm sure, but you've certainly encapsulated the high faith in that presentation. It always is, for me, who loves our garden, the fact that the pictures of your gardens are just absolutely magnificent. Whilst you did talk about the universal house of justice, a phrase in itself worth amplifying more and more, the fact that that's in Haifa, the most beautiful gardens there. We didn't actually see that particular photograph, but the impression that you gave us of the other gardens is just beautiful, and the faith in one country. Yeah, the challenges ahead are just incredible. But again, you talk about community and a sense of that. So, Barney, thank you very, very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a correction to make. Many of us will probably have seen Fiddler on the Roof, and Topple goes back at one stage to shout and scream because he missed the baby. And he wanted to see the baby. The baby happened to be a Singer sewing machine, but that doesn't matter. I've actually missed the fact that Rabbi Hackenbach has actually got 3 beautiful baby girls and not the 2 that I mentioned. So my apologies to, in fact, Gila actually, but I did forget the baby. So please forgive me. Deacon Anthony. Anthony Clark was born and grew up in South Africa. He lectured at the university there in Bible studies, and then in England at Newman College, Birmingham, another college I know from my hometown. After some years as schools advisor in religious education for London Catholic schools, he was ordained a deacon for St Edward's the Confessor in Golders Green. On retirement, he completed a foundation degree in hospital chaplaincy, which included a major emphasis on familiarity with all the world faiths, and continues to be a volunteer chaplain at the Royal Free, as well as his involvement in the Barnet Multi-Faith Forum. He is a widower with 2 sons and 4 grandchildren, one of his sons living in the land of Israel. Deacon Anthony is our go-to person for all ethical matters whose judgment we have complete trust in, and his company on our executive we always value. Anthony.
Thank you very much, Ez. I must explain how I got on to being involved with Barnet Multi-Faith Forum. A great chaplain at the Royal Free is Bernd Koschland. He's retired now, but he so involved me and gave me this vision of how we must serve humanity. And in the chaplaincy team, where we are very much one with people of all different faiths and none, serving patients of all faiths and none, Bernd Koschland was an outstanding light to me. He's retired now, but as I want to just begin by paying tribute to him. I'm going to begin by going into sharing my screen. Because what I want to do is talk about a document that the Pope has just released. And it's the third of his 3 great encyclicals. They're the letters in the Catholic Church, but I think it's one that does, as I say there, embraces world vision. And more importantly, it really does bring out the oneness of humanity and his love for it. So I'm just struggling to move it on. Not quite sure what I do now to move the slideshow on.
David.
F5. There we go. Right, so there's 3 encyclicals by the Pope, and they I think will be his great legacy. The first was on the joy of the gospel. The second was called Laudato Si, and was all about creation and our respect and need for creation. And the third one, which he released just beginning of October, is called Fratelli Tutti, which is the words of St. Francis in the 11th century. And it means to all my brothers and sisters, to all brothers and sisters. It's a universal greeting. And just to say that fratelli in Italian, like in Spanish and in other European countries, includes women. It's only in English that brothers exclude women. And I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. It was released in October, and these opening words are from St. Francis. Now, St. Francis, you may know, in the 11th century, one of his great journeys was to Egypt to meet the Sultan to try and work for peace. And he was a sign 1,000 years ago of interfaith relations and interfaith peacemaking, and in this particular case, with a Muslim leader. And all through this document, he quotes Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and other world faith leaders, all based on the papal meetings in Assisi, which are held each year, all to do with bringing people together in this vision of one world. So this picture, Pope Francis with a Muslim leader. Now, in the encyclical, it's based on one of the parables. It's the parable of the Good Samaritan, and he uses it constantly all through the encyclical. It's 300 paragraphs long, it's long. But the 3 elements he notes in the encyclical. First is no questions asked. The Good Samaritan just helps. Secondly, the help that he offers is focused. It's not random help, it's specific to the needs of this person. And thirdly, the promise to return to make up any further costs. And the Pope kind of emphasizes these as practical points. Now, I want to read the encyclical. I read the parable because the few points I'm going to make all just arise from it. So a lawyer asked Jesus what he must do to obtain eternal life. And Jesus replies, love your neighbor. And the lawyer asks, and so who is my neighbor? And this is Jesus' reply. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, passing by was a priest going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured wine on them. He then put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more is required." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And he said, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said, "Go and show him likewise." And this is the model that Pope Francis is putting forward. He's got 2 major areas, huge long chapters. The first is dark clouds over a closed world, and it's a very detailed analysis of some of the problems we're facing. And the second long paragraph is all about a heart open to the whole world. And again, he goes through all the ways of being open. Now I'm going to put up a piece of text, and I promise you this is the only text from the document I'm going to put up, but in the middle of it is an absolute nugget, which I think sums up tonight and what I think is so common between all the speakers you've heard tonight. It's about encounter that becomes culture. The word culture points to something deeply embedded within a people, its most cherished convictions and its way of life. A people's culture is more than an abstract idea. It has to do with their desires, their interests, and ultimately the way they live their lives. To speak of a culture of encounter means that we as a people should be passionate about meeting others, seeking points of contact, building bridges, planning a project that includes everyone. This becomes an aspiration and a style of life. The subject of this culture is the people, not simply one part of society that will pacify the rest with the help of professional or media resources. It's that middle sentence that I think is the nugget that so sums up the Christian contribution to this whole area. I'm just going to repeat it. To speak of a culture of encounter means that we as a people should be passionate about meeting others, seeking points of contact, building bridges, planning a project that includes everyone. That is the challenge that he puts out. He specifically addressed 2 issues and really comes down very strongly on both. The first, that there is no such thing as a just war. Those of you who know your history of morality will know there used to be arguments that what was and wasn't a just war. He says with modern weapons, there's no just war because it's always collateral that receives the greatest punishment. And secondly, that the death penalty is inadmissible and must be abolished. He argues those very strongly. And then he ends with a final challenge, especially to the West. And I recognize this, I know we struggle with this in our community. A truly humanitarian response to the reality and needs of migrants and refugees must be found. We haven't got a response at the moment. We're struggling with who we will let in, how much we'll give them. Refugees and migrants are people, and in this one world of ours, we've got to find a place for them. You probably know in the prayer of St. Francis, it's where there's discord, let me sow unity. And a commentator summed up the teaching of this encyclical by this pastiche of a prayer, but it brings out it quite well. Where there's populism, Pope Francis focuses on people. Where there's nationalism, he calls for the reform of the United Nations. Where there is individualism, he calls for solidarity. Where there is inequality, he calls for fairer distributions. Where there is digital trolling, he calls for kindness. Where politicians hate, he calls for dialogue. And where there is ideology, he calls for genuine love. So this document is called Fratelli Tutti. I've heard a number of Catholics who just call it Tutti Frutti, but it's Fratelli Tutti. And it's to all brothers and sisters, and you can find it online if you just put in Google Fratelli Tutti. I want to do this postscript. Great loss. We have all of us have experienced the death of Jonathan Sacks, and his final book was Morality, and was summed up by a reviewer in this simple sentence, which you've already heard mentioned tonight, but it's worth saying again. Our challenge is that we as a people have moved from being we to I, and the way forward is to become we. So, thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you once again, Anthony. Absolutely just brilliant presentation that you've just given us tonight. meeting others, building bridges. Yeah, and we will talk about we and I later, I think. But that phrase that you just mentioned, refugees are human beings. I would like us to stop talking about refugees and talk about human beings. We only talk about them as human beings when we see some terrible pictures of people that we've lost. So you're 100% right, and the work that you do in your local community, as others do, of course, to support these human beings, all with a personal tragedy, all with a story to tell. And we were all refugees. Many of us have all, either in our lifetime or other lifetimes, have come to this country. And I think what you've just said is just so important. Thank you, Deacon Anthony, for that. Whilst I'm on this subject at the moment of your wonderful presentation, it gives me an opportunity to thank our chairman, Trevor, and all my colleagues on the executive for their valuable contributions to our cause. They really are we, and it's not I in our team. It's every one of them that makes something possible. They are different. They're all valuable to work with, and the work that we do in promoting understanding and social cohesion in Barnet. So it's my round of applause, please, to you all for being with us again tonight and for the work that you've done. And of course, please, there are still, ladies and gentlemen, opportunities to ask questions. So please put your questions in the box, and Trevor will be monitoring them. I'm now going to come to, finally, to our miscreant. Sorry, I'm only joking, of my team. My great friend and vice chair of the Barnet Multi-Faith Forum, Iman Hamid. Salam alaikum to you. He was born and raised as a Finchleyan, and having attended the madrasa at 36 Long Lane and the secondary school at Christ College, which provides me with another opportunity of mentioning the name of Lord Jonathan Sacks, to whom Hamid and he are both alumni. Having finished his secular education, Hamid began to pursue an understanding of the Islamic disciplines by traveling to Cairo, Egypt, and joining Al-Azhar University. There he received a diploma in the Islamic Mission College in Islamic Studies and went on to complete his degree in Islamic law and thereafter undertake a master's in Islamic political science. Hamid has since returned to Finchley, delivering intensive courses, detailed seminars, and inspirational talks. And he's recently taken up the actual position as director of the IANL. That's the mosque in North Finchley. Outside of work, Hamid enjoys reading, playing football, and now I understand cycling in the afternoons, which leads me to his expense to tell you all a private joke, which only a chutzpahdik Jew like me can get away with. That he's a man very hard to reach, or more correctly, extremely hard to receive a reply from. So we're delighted tonight that he actually RSVP'd, and we have him to talk to us this evening. We know Hamid is married, as his wife only recently gave birth, which in my mind gave him the perfect excuse to ignore me, and which we all send him our love, and his wife our hearty congratulations, and of course, Mazel Tov. Hamid, the floor is yours.
Nice one, Ez. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I take that all on the chin quite well.
I'm glad.
Special mention to obviously the Barnet Multi-Faith Forum for making this happen this evening, as well as a special mention to Jackie and Roya for helping organize everything in the background. And a special welcome to Madam Mayor, Caroline Stock. Just a note before I start on what is observations of what it means to practice Islam in the 21st century. On obviously the passing of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Very sad, and our condolences go out to him, his family, and all those affected by his passing. We have in Islam a very sort of high status, and we raise the the ranks of the scholar to quite a high level. And when a scholar passes away, it is not just his death that grieves us, and his passing, the fact that he's no longer with us, but rather that the knowledge that he possesses, his experiences, his understandings that he has the ability to pass on to others has now gone with him to the next life, and is no longer able to pass it on to anybody else. And that is the greatest of loss. But to God we belong, and to God we shall return. To start off my sort of piece, I was thinking about the sort of the relevance of God in the modern world, and how sort of religion in general has taken a bit of a hit with sort of people's spirituality, religiosity being more of something that happens on the periphery as opposed to being something that is integral as an integral part of somebody's life. And this is as a result of living in a society which I think Rabbi Hackenbrock sort of described quite succinctly. In a society that sort of encourages the negative facets of the human character. I know he mentioned something about how the youth are encouraged to be sort of egocentric and self-absorbed, and there's sort of this blame game going around. But there's also sort of elements of pride and greed and a sort of a covetous nature that is pushed. And the pandemic, if has shown anything, has shown that our covetous nature for toilet paper is probably the most important thing to us right now. And in this world, sort of in this view of what is going on, faith, for myself in particular, Islam provides an alternative. It provides meaning and purpose to my life that is outside of the realm of the physical, outside of the realm of the material, of what I have and what I don't have. And it creates and connects me to a community that is diverse, that has such depth to it, that even if I was to spend my lifetime, I would not get to the bottom of. The negative portrayal of Islam and Muslims in the media and how we're viewed in general, it doesn't help in preserving and sort of strengthening our faith, strengthening our ties, strengthening that community bond that we have in the 21st century. If anything, we're sort of a bit apprehensive, sort of a bit afraid to be Muslim. We're afraid to sort of to express that thing that is very much a strong part of us. Now, obviously, with the whole COVID-19 happening this year, that's affected everybody. Personal perspectives in terms of how it's affected Muslims, how it's affected myself in particular. The sort of the concept of social distancing, the fact that we're not allowed to meet, the fact that we're not allowed to have congregational prayers means that we are sort of no longer connected with one another as we were before. The mosque is frequented less and less, and obviously the mosque is the home of congregational prayers. We don't really have individual prayers. Sort of you can pray wherever you want, whether it's in your home or whether it's in the street or it's in the shops or wherever. You know, the Prophet is has been recorded to have said that the entire earth has been made for me a mosque and a place of purity. So we're able to worship God wherever we are, but the mosque has a special sort of connection with one another in terms of that it unites us, it brings us together in congregational worship, which we're not allowed to do, and we can't do at the moment. And obviously that has its mental and spiritual implications. Well, with that, obviously there's a less of an attachment to places of worship and thus worship in itself. But on the flip side, there has been an increase in people's own personal faith. So, for example, in Ramadan, the Ramadan that just went this year, we weren't allowed to sort of gather in the mosques, and we have night prayers in the mosque every Ramadan. But we spend a considerable amount of time praying in congregation throughout the night for over an hour or so. And it's sort of quite widely attended. This year, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that, but I had many people in conversation with myself, informing me that this Ramadan was a chance for themselves to reconnect with the Quran, reconnect with their own worship of God. Instead of coming to the mosque and relying on the Imam to lead them in prayers, they were at home leading prayers with their families and with their friends. So there's always a positive to what seems to be a negative. And we believe firmly, and there's a strong principle amongst Muslims, that God is just. And in times of difficulty that we are facing, the little acts of worship that we do, the little acts of faith, and the small good that we are able to do, God will safeguard our faith through that, and will bring us through this difficulty, and we'll come out of it stronger, God willing. From an interfaith perspective, I think all faiths are facing the same challenges, if not similar challenges, with regards to their communities, with regards to their congregational worship, and the connection to God, which, if in a secular world that wasn't difficult enough, we have COVID-19 to throw a spanner in the works as well. What we've seen at the moment is, especially for mosques, and I'm sure that is for other faith groups, is that mosques have gone online. So we are delivering sermons, classes, support groups on the internet, via Zoom and other platforms. YouTube Live has been a massive feature for our mosque here. And that has connected us as a mosque to certain demographics of society that we weren't really able to connect with. Historically, the mosque has always catered, here in the UK especially, to the middle-aged working man, and slowly over the years that has changed somewhat, and now we're seeing ourselves being connected to another demographic that we were beforehand disconnected from. If anything, the state of affairs and the situation that we see today only re-emphasizes the need for interfaith harmony and unity between us, not because of just the shared challenges, but also the shared solutions that we have. I know the speakers that have preceded me have mentioned a lot of things that we can all relate to, and we all have in our faiths. And if we are to focus on these and emphasize them and come together as we are doing tonight on many more occasions, and show that unity and work together and move forwards, I think we can make a positive change and safeguard the faith of our youth and the generations to come, and also show that there is a purpose and there is a need for faith in the modern world. And I hope that can be realized soon. Thank you very much for your time and for listening.
Thank you, Hamid. Thank you very much indeed. You quite rightly, in the course of this conversation, talked about the COVID and the fact that the faith communities have certainly come together. I mentioned, of course, what's happening in other communities, but you exemplified that by talking about the fact that we've come together to support the vulnerable, the lonely, and those that are in real poverty. And that is the benefit of coming together as faith communities in one aspect. And of course, you also mentioned in your talk about the fact that probably we don't always understand that the attacks on the Islamic community has that psychological impact, which is absolutely similar to the psychological and real impact of anti-Semitism in the Jewish community, which we've just had to get over, and hopefully with the leadership of the new leadership, that the threat that was there will fall away. But the psychological impact of both communities is something that we have to recognize. But that show of unity is so important, and I'm hoping that this is the message that certainly comes across tonight. Now, thank you, Trevor. I'm going to go to you. It's question time. So, Trevor, what have you got for this panel, and for whom tonight?
Okay, thank you, Ez, and thank you for all your wonderful presentations, speakers. It's been a very moving experience to hear you all, particularly during Interfaith Week, which is a time where we celebrate and we educate and we learn from one another. There are two specific questions for two of the presenters, and also a question for each of the presenters. So first of all, Suchita, you talked about Hindus welcoming all people, including refugees, and the satisfaction that comes from reducing suffering. And you also talked about karma. And I wonder if you could just sort of say something briefly about both those things, the satisfaction of reducing suffering, and also what karma is, and do those things relate? You're on mute. I think you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, because history tells us that India has always been invaded. And at the same time, we have got a lot of immigrants who came into India. India was completely a Hindu country. Even at that time, India didn't hesitate to accept these immigrants. Everybody was welcome. When the Persians came, they asked the king of Gujarat, will you please allow us in? And he said, we are so crowded. Our state is so crowded. We cannot possibly have you. So they said, you are milk, we are sugar. Let's mix it together and we can produce something brilliant. And the king thought about it and he said, yes, please do come in. And they landed at the port in the Gujarat, and the rest is history, because they have become one of the best business community, and even in the banking sector. When the Jewish people came, they brought them with them more their expertise. The money also came with them, the trading started, and so on. So we were very happy to have all these different communities in India. Even the Armenians, people know very little about the Armenian Christians in India. They came and started the trade. So when we talk about theory of karma, our religion tells us you need to act, that you have to sow your seeds for your next birth. You have a good karma, good action, you will get a good next life, because it is, we believe in reincarnation, and we believe in the life cycle going on. The body disappears, but the soul is still there. So everybody needs to act according to the theory of karma. With good deeds, you get good life, and also the next life.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
The next question I have is for Barney, if you wouldn't mind unmuting. Barney, this is a slightly more edgy question. You said that the Baha'i was one of the newest faiths, and you talked about the philosophies and the collective social action that was taking place, but you also talked about prayer, and I wonder if you could tell us, who do Baha'i pray to?
Baha'is pray to God.
Oh. You've got to elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, I said that Baha'u'llah is for us a manifestation, as in Baha'i terminology, a manifestation of the names and attributes of God. We believe that God, the essence of God is beyond our knowing. We are limited human beings where we cannot know we cannot know the essence of God, but we know of God and of his teachings, God's teachings, through the messengers, through the prophets, through the teachers, and so on. So all the great wealth of sacred writings that exist in the world are doors through which we can begin to glimpse something of the nature of God and of God's will and God's wishes. So the manifestation of God is I mean, for us, I suppose one might say a prophet, but more than that, a teacher who is, for us, the representative of God on the earth. But we may pray through Baha'u'llah, but we pray to God. I mean, the Baha'i prayers are addressed to, "Oh God," or to our Lord, and so on. So it's you know, that's where we pray. That's how we direct our prayers.
Thank you very much. And sorry for putting you on the spot with that, but you answered that very eloquently. Thank you very much. Right, there's a question for each of the panelists now. And the question is, when the pandemic comes to an end, which we know won't be long now, and when the restrictions are eased and we go back to some sort of normality, from a faith perspective, what are you most looking forward to doing? And I'll start with Hamid.
I think just seeing everybody again at the mosque that we haven't seen for a very long time. Obviously, the elderly have been targeted for sort of staying at home and being the most vulnerable, and they are the ones that tend to frequent the mosque the most, and they are the ones who have been absent the most throughout this pandemic. So just seeing them, I mean, obviously we're in touch with them for the most part via phone and online through these sorts of platforms. But it's not the same. It's never the same. Same as this meeting, it would never be the same online as it is in person. So I think that's something that I'm looking forward to the most, and having a good meal, because we don't really eat in the mosque anymore. So just having a good meal with everybody.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Piney, if I could ask you the same question. If you could unmute.
Thank you, Trevor. I think obviously the social aspects and we spoke earlier about the well-being of so many members that are living, shielding, isolating, and therefore, of course, we want them to feel comfortable to come back. But I think there are a number of younger people that have put their lives on hold and not being able to get married, and even today, very, very difficult for them to be able to plan for their futures. And I think that is something that we look forward to, you know, something which till now was taken for granted, the ability to be able to, you know, to be able to plan, to look forward, and to please God, to celebrate a joyous occasion and welcoming these people to part of our community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Chita, if you could unmute and answer the question, thank you. No, you've muted now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, we are looking very much, you know, forward to bring the people together, because we have missed out on a lot of celebrations and festivities. We need to bring together, and we need to give a lot of attention to elderly who have been isolated, and we have to really celebrate life. I think once we the vaccine kickstarts, the norm, we are really looking forward to have some sort of normality and visiting elderly. And there are many people like me in this country who don't have any relatives in this country. I don't have any relatives in this country. So my extended family is are the people who have come from the same town or same region. They are my family, and I'm looking forward to meet them all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Deacon Anthony, if you could unmute. Thank you. You've just come back on mute.
Yeah, now I'm unmuted. I'm going to say the biggest thing we're looking forward to is using our hands to touch each other. In worship, there's a kiss of sign of peace. We all shake hands.
Yes.
Give each other cups of tea. We put our arms around each other's shoulders. Sometimes we've got a wonderful church hall and we have dances. It's just touching that we're missing so much skin on skin. At the Royal Free Hospital, there are big signs everywhere which show a mummy holding a baby on her front and saying, it's skin on skin that makes the baby grow and be happy. It's true all through life and we're missing it.
Oh, thank you very much. And Barney, if you could unmute.
Yeah, all of the above. I really miss, I think we will so long to be able to come together as in our communities, locally, nationally, internationally, to worship and pray together, to eat together, to share food together, which is so important in all our traditions. And I'm with Deacon Anthony on this, hugging. I think we miss the touch of another human being. So all of those things. One thing I won't miss is going into London by train, but there we go. That's another whole other issue.
Thank you very much. Now, I haven't missed anyone out, have I? No. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to singing and really miss singing. I hadn't thought that I'd miss singing, but I've missed singing in worship. And it's reminded me of our need to create a Barnet Multi-Faith Forum choir at some point after this. Now there's a project. Okay, Ez, those are all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Yes, I will take that up at some point, but it will have to be a tuneless choir, I'm afraid, if I've got anything to be part of. I'm also looking forward to what we call the Kiddushim, the gathering of people at the end of our service. And as the rabbi knows only too well, my small glass of whiskey that I share with many of others in my community. He won't, of course, miss my talking during his sermon, but that's the way of the Jewish world, I think. I'm going to now ask Caroline Stock, our esteemed Mayor of Barnet, to sum up this evening and to recite, when she's ready, the Interfaith Leaders Statement for IFN. Caroline is a great friend of the Forum, always ready to support our work and visit many other charities and community organisations in the borough. She's been a regal advocate for many causes during this pandemic, working tirelessly for the most vulnerable in our community as chair of the Barnet Health and Wellbeing Board. Caroline, on behalf of us all, thank you for all you do and welcome.
Thank you so much, Ez. I'm going to first read out the statement because I think it's really important before I just say a few words. So I'm going to start.
It should be on screen.
We believe that good interfaith relations are a vital part of a harmonious, just and respectful society. We pledge today to deepen our work to increase understanding about and between our faiths and to strengthen our cooperation on social issues. We renew our commitment to developing effective and long-term ways of dialogue and mutual learning. We shall continue to seek to understand the patterns of engagement of our faith communities through history and today to affirm the positive aspects of these patterns and to heal wounds of misunderstanding where these are found. While our great religious traditions are distinct in belief and practice, there is so much that unites us. We will draw on fundamental values held in common and on the wisdom of our respective faith traditions to continue to work as individual communities together for the well-being of our society, our wider global community, and the planet that is our home. Alongside all goodwill, we will work to tackle with renewed determination the challenges of poverty, ignorance, injustice, crime and violence, and social fragmentation, and to help shape a society where all feel at home, all are valued and justly treated, and all have a chance to thrive. As you just said that I could just say a few words, and I would first of all like to start with just really saying a little bit about Lord Sachs. I got the Times, and I just wanted to show you that it's here. And unusually, there are 2 full pages, which is very unusual. And I think that really sums it up. At the top, it said, Lord Sachs is a charismatic chief rabbi who was an eloquent, powerful advocate for the importance of all faiths. And I think your summary at the beginning, just showing that little clip, was so true, that he stood up, and it wasn't only about his faith, it's all about all of us coming together. And I feel every time I come to the Multi-Faith Forum, I feel so privileged. I think a lot of you know that my religion is Judaism, but hopefully all of us coming together becomes a strong unit, unified being, and it really is important. And they're not just empty words, it really does mean a lot. And there was something I was listening to that I saw on Facebook, that was an interview with Lord Sachs very recently. I think it might even have been one of his last interviews, and he was talking about just small things and about every day. And I so truly believe this, that every day we need to capture the joy of life, you know, whether you look out of the window. And at the moment, you know, if you look at the trees and the colours, I mean, it's just amazing. And I think at the beginning of this whole horrific COVID, for me, just to be able to go into the garden and hear, I don't know whether any of you heard this, the singing of the birds, you know, it was remarkable. And I think so maybe something COVID, and all of you have talked in a different way, each speakers, about moral order. Each one of you have said, you know, from we to I, but I actually think that COVID has actually brought something very positive. It's had a silver lining, because I've been involved in the community, gone to lots of different things, whether they've been virtual. And I think each one of them, communities have come together unbelievably, whether it's been food banks or whether it's been the fact that people have been cooking for somebody else. And it, I think, has brought communities together. And for me, that's been a huge silver lining. It really is. I hope that can go forward. And I just know Sarah Conway, who's one of my fellow councillors, this shows how things, in a way, a community can come together. We both were talking about how people are feeling so isolated, things that all the speakers have talked about. And in each one of the religions that's been addressed. But we thought that maybe, how lovely would it be? We're coming up, there was something called Mitzvah Day, which is something that was going to happen on Sunday and it's been cancelled. And how could we somehow show people of all faiths, of many people are getting shielding at home and they're being given meals. We obviously can't travel around, we're not able to, but there's a flower bank where we approached them and said, how about on Friday, it's the Day of Kindness, and we're launching something, we've even got a new name for it, which is bringing smiles to your door. And we're going to bring, with the meal, people are going to get a plant. And that's just a small thing that will just say that we care and we're out there. And if everybody, if like on Friday, maybe just a little act of kindness, whether it's picking up the phone or sending a text, or maybe making a low sugar, because I have to say that health and well-being, cake or something to somebody that you know is feeling lonely. You know, how brilliant is that? And I think that's something that the Multi-Faith Forum do so brilliantly. So hopefully that's just a thought from me. And thank you so much for a wonderful, inspiring evening as always. Thank you, Ez.
Caroline, thank you. Yes, thank you very much indeed, Caroline, for your words and the fact that you've accentuated the actual positive through COVID-19. I love the idea of a flower bank, and bringing smiles to your door. I think that's just that's wonderful. And perhaps as soon as you know more specifically, we can put that out on our website and people can participate wherever they can possibly. Ladies and gentlemen, it was all been mentioned a lot tonight, but we did start with our thoughts of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. And in his last major work, Deacon Anthony mentioned the book called Morality. He wrote about the need for a cultural shift from I to we. If we surround ourselves with people with the same views as ourselves, we become extreme. We need to renew those face-to-face encounters with the people not like us to realize that we can disagree strongly, yet still remain friends. It's in those face-to-face encounters that we discover that the people not like us are just people like us. He concludes, every time we hold out the hand of friendship to somebody not like us, whose class, faith, or color are different from ours, we heal one of the fractures of our wounded world. Friends, it's been a great evening tonight, as Caroline just said. Thank you all for your contributions, for the panelists, for those that stayed with us. It's been really wonderful to see you. And I look forward to you joining us tonight. I look forward to us being all together, all of us, the we, to progress our conversation face to face and in the flesh, touching flesh. We hope to see you all tomorrow night for our Diwali, the Festival of Light, and for our famous interfaith quiz on Thursday night. Please, God, look after us all. Good night, stay well, stay safe, and stay secure. Shalom, peace, and salam alaikum to you all. Thank you. And can I thank David once again for his magnificent contribution to tonight's event, putting it all together. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Good night.